In this video we will learn how to work with Boolean operations and especially how to subtract one 3D object from the other. We start with a simple 3D shape with a sphere. I just draw a sphere here with a radius of 30 centimeters, and it's always about which kind of object you subtract from the other to get a nice result. It's obviously also what you actually want to achieve. What I do right now, I just draw a helix next to this, and this is my helix, and I also look at this in my front view and put it next to each other, and it also will be a little bit longer. I go to into three turns, and I have the same radius like my objects. This means 30 centimeters. And next step, I just put it onto my sphere. I use my align tool and choose my next object, say center to center, and now my helix is already around my sphere, and now this helix is just a one or two dimensional line, and I just have to give this a little bit of volume. So what I can do is in my render settings I can go enable in render, especially enable in viewport, and give the whole thing a little bit of thickness. For example, like this, 20 centimeters, and I make it a little bit more smooth and give this 24 sides, so it's a little bit smoother. And this is the starting point for our Boolean operations. Okay, we found Boolean or Boolean under create geometry, and then this little pull-down menu under compound objects. And normally I work with Boolean, not with Boolean. I select my my sphere, and now you can see that I can choose Boolean. I choose Boolean because most of the time it gives me the better results. It is a little bit more it takes a little bit longer for the computer, but it's also like this, that I can subtract more than one object from each other. This is something which I use quite often. Also very important, I only choose Boolean once. This is really important, and most of the time at the beginning you make mistakes that you choose it several times. So what I do is I just click it once. I already did it. I deselect it, and I select it again. It's a little bit of a detour, but the advantage is that it doesn't happen to me that I click twice on Boolean, which can cause trouble on the long run. Okay, here we already go. It's subtraction is selected by default, and now I can subtract every object with start picking, but I can't start picking my helix, and there's a reason for this. It definitely has to be an editable mesh or an editable poly, and this is just a helix which is has a 3-dimensional volume in my viewport, so I have to add an edit poly on it, edit poly modifier. And if I now choose my sphere again and go to start picking, you can see what's happening. My my helix is nicely subtracted, and it looks already quite good. Okay, there are several things you can do in Boolean. With Boolean, you can then again go into the menu, and you can choose this. You can differentiate between sphere and helix, and you can already see that you can change the settings. I can go into my helix and still change the parameters of my helix, and you can see that it has immediately an impact on my sphere, which is really really nice. You can choose the height and all these things. That's quite helpful. I can also go into this and go into my level of edit poly into elements. That's really important. And I can then, for example, say that I move the whole thing. I move it up and down. This is also really helpful. Okay, I choose my z-axis, and this is just the object moving up and down. So I have still full control of my objects. I can choose actually both of this. I can also choose the sphere in my polar menu, and then change for example, the radius of the sphere, and all these things. I can go into my operands, and on this menu I can just move my whole operand. This is again, I'm just moving the helix in all directions, and I can do the same thing obviously with my sphere. Another thing with Boolean is quite helpful. I already mentioned it. I can just subtract different kind of volumes. If I now go into standard primitives and choose a cylinder and draw a cylinder, and I don't want to have any segments in my height, I just go into a line, choose my my sphere, and just put it into the center of my sphere, center in X, Y, and Z direction. Next step, I can just put an edit poly modifier on it, and I will copy the whole thing. You can just see what I'm doing. I hold my shift key, I copy it to the right side as an instant, and we will just see what this will do. I choose my sphere again, and on top I can go into start picking and pick my object, and now we have my sphere with this helix subtracted, and also my cylinder subtracted. Just because I used instance, I can choose this cylinder outside the object, and when I move this you can't see anything. I have to move this in the substructure under elements, and if I now select all, this means one element, and start moving it, you can see that it also moves in my object. And for example, if I now choose polygons and the top on top of this object, and start scaling it, then you can see that it also has an impact on my sphere, which is quite nice. You have full control. You can just say I choose this thing, again the whole object, and I, for example, start rotating it, and then you can see that this works quite nicely. And I can obviously also do the same thing again in my sphere. I have to deselect or leave the sub element of my cylinder, and now I choose my sphere again. I go into operands and move down a little bit. Here you can see it's already important that you name these things properly, that you know this is a cylinder, which is in this case quite easy. And here I can also just choose rotate, and I can rotate my cylinder in my Boolean and design it a little bit, and have a really nice possibility of controlling it. And if I don't like the cylinder just because I wanted to use something else, I can choose this cylinder and say extract selected, and then the cylinder is out again, and I can replace it with whatever I want. I can also probably have the idea to say that the whole thing already has a material, and for example my sphere has material number 1, and my cylinder has material number 2, and if I again, this was didn't work. Okay, material number 2, and if I now go again into start picking, you can see that the inside of my subtraction has the material of my cylinder, and so on. And I think that's also a really good way of designing it. You can see that my cylinder was a little bit rough. The amount of sizes was not enough. So what I do is I just go into cylinder and go into the substructure of a cylinder, and I increase my sizes, sides, for example, to 30. And oops, the whole thing is gone. The whole thing is gone because there is this edit poly on top, which has an impact on the amount of sizes, something you should never do. So I switch my edit poly off. Or what I can also do, I just put it into the bin. And I can just add a new edit poly on my instance object. I go into edit poly and add this on the object outside. And quite interesting, if I now go again into my operands, you can see there's this edit poly again. And the trick was just I deleted it and I just added it into this one. This was more or less like a mistake, but I think it was worth looking at. Then you can see that you're quite flexible in moving modifiers, but you should never change the topology when there's an edit poly or something on top, because it's related to the topology, and then your whole 3D object will mess up. Some other nice things you can do with Boolean in terms of subtraction. I go into, I select helix and cylinder, I go to extract selected. My cylinder I don't need right now. I just want to show this to you with my helix structure, and we have other methods of intersection or subtraction in this case. If I choose imprint, for example, and I go into start picking, you can see that it just cuts the surface of the object. If I go into my wireframe mode, you can see that it just aligns along the surface. I can choose instead of wireframe hidden line, and then you can see it even better. Okay, and that's the first thing I wanted to show you on top. And the other thing is also really nice. I can choose cookie, and there's a difference between subtraction with and without cookie. We will see what this will do. I go to start picking, and you can see that it just cuts the whole thing off, and it doesn't fill. It's a little bit like a Christmas cookie, and this is also a nice way to work with subtraction, because, for example, you can now just apply shell modifier and probably say in an amount of 10 centimeters. This was a little bit too much. You can see that the geometry starts to struggle a little bit, because there are a little bit too many edges there. You can optimize this, but this is not important to me right now. If I go to straight corners, it looks a little bit better. However, if you have simple geometries, that's a really nice way of working with this. Just use cookie, and then you can give this a little bit of volume. We now want to look at one thing in terms of the topology of my 3D objects. It could be that you have problems with Boolean or Boolean because there are creases and wedges, and I will show you what I mean and also how you can avoid this. For this, I just draw a plane around this with a length of not with the length. The length is fine with the segments. Okay, one segment and length direction, one segment and width direction. I will add a shell modifier. So it has a little bit of thickness. And now I choose my toes, and I go again into compound object Boolean. And now we don't use subtraction, we use intersection. And intersection means if I go to start picking, that it just keeps the intersection of these two objects. Okay, and what you can see is you can already see that there are a little bit of weird shades here, and it doesn't look too good. And if I move this object, if I go into operands and now I move down and choose my plane, then I can move it, and you can see that it's struggling a little bit also in terms of geometry. Sometimes there are weird creases and ridges there, and really depends on how complex your object was. And if it happens to you like this, there's one rule which you normally should keep an eye on when you work with Boolean. What we can see is that our torus node has quite small tessellation, and our plane doesn't have any tessellation. So when I go again into my Boolean and I increase the amount of tessellation with my plane, which I do right now, I go into length segments 10 by 10. The aim is, there's one rule, it should have the same density of tessellation like my Boolean object. I just increase it a little bit further, so it starts to fit quite well. And also in terms of length, I just extend it a little bit. So I think more or less it's already quite good. If I now go into Boolean again, I go to start picking, and I go in terms of intersection and just start to pick my plane with quite similar topology like my object. You can see there's a big difference. If I now move this object, you can't see these creases and ridges anymore. I just move it, and this already looks quite well. And if I go again into plane and in my object and choose again length and with one segment, you can see again it doesn't look so well. So sorry, I have to go choose operands, and then I can move it. And this means this is something you have to keep an eye on. If this whole Boolean doesn't look too good, then I would just look at the topology. It's also important that objects really intersect if you use Boolean. It's not enough if they just touch each other. They really have to intersect, otherwise you have a problem with this whole Boolean, because there's a division by 0, which is definitely not a good idea. And there's also something depends on how you use Boolean. You can have a tessellation on this side. Sometimes it's quite helpful, and you can do this in this advanced options menu at the bottom. I just open it right now again, and there is this make quadrilaterals, and if I switch this on, you can see that it tries to, not twice, it definitely will do it, that these are all quad polygons, which can help, especially if you use a tessellation for penalizing or something like this. And you can change it, you can change the size. The smaller it gets, the smaller the size in percentage, the more dense it is. And if I go to 8, then you're already at a point where there is no tessellation in anymore. Sometimes this helps a little bit optimizing the next step of your design. The last thing related to Boolean I would like to show you is the function union. I just draw one simple box, and this is my simple box. I go choose select, and then I go into tools array, and just want to have 10 boxes. I will look at this in my preview, and I just pie them up a little bit, but I still want them to intersect. I will rotate them a little bit and in several directions. Okay, this is my design, and what I want, if I look at this in my wireframe mode, obviously it's clear that they intersect in a way, but I just want to subtract only the intersections, so it's one object, for example, like a building, like a spiral, or whatever kind of building this is. So what I can do right now is I just go again into standard primitives, into compound objects, Boolean, and then I choose union, and I just go to start picking. I pick this one, this, and all my other objects, and you can see that it just calculates the intersection, and the intersection in the union function is then not there anymore, and you can see that it's optimized the whole geometry, and it's also a really nice way of working with Boolean to get interesting shapes and just union it in an easy way. If choosing all these objects is still a little bit too exhausting for you, I do it differently. I go again into comp objects, pro Boolean, choose union, and I go to start picking and I press my H key, and then I can choose all of them, all my boxes, and say pick, and just it takes some seconds, and then I didn't have to click all of them, deselect it, and this is also really good if there are more objects to choose. Go to start picking, use your shortcut for select by name, and then you select just your objects, and this is definitely even a much faster way than just clicking all little cubes or objects.